Do meditators still push the limits of the body and mind to become enlightened? For example, the story you told about the monk who stuck his finger in a fire, or Zen monks who stand under cold waterfalls to strengthen the mind.
Yes, many meditators still do that, and they push the limits and think that might help to become enlightened. I would say to push the limits a little bit might be very helpful, but it is for an unexperienced person very hard to see the limit and when to see the point when you push to the limit or when you push over it. And when you push over it, it can become very dangerous and stupid even. Like sticking the finger in a fire is not helpful to become enlightened. It might be to have good physical strength. It might be very helpful to stand under cold waterfalls, and that strengthens mind and body, but it's not helpful for becoming enlightened. It might help with your concentration, it might strengthen your health, as I said, but that has nothing to do with enlightenment. That can very easily make your ego very strong, and I know some of the people who did such things. I met some Mahayana nuns who made such things. One has been burning her arm. Another had put a coal on her head and almost died. She passed out. And fell over, so that the coal fell off, and that saved her life. Otherwise, that would have been the end of her striving for enlightenment. So that is what can happen when you push over the limits. But when you are on retreat and you are not going to the limits, and when you not really push them with the help of an experienced teacher, then you will not have the results that you can have when you push them a little bit. But it is very important to have the guidance of a teacher, because, as I mentioned before, you might not know where the limits are. You might think that fasting, starving, might be a good thing to help you to become enlightened, or that to stay up all night before the teacher tells you might be a good thing. But it is not. It will ruin your meditation practice, because it has more to do with your ego and with your defilements than with actually the way of letting go and being in the present moment and doing what needs to be done in the present moment in order to become enlightened. So it's not easy to say yes and no to this question, but I said all I have to say.
Yeah, it makes me think of Lungpo Chodok. What you're saying makes me think of what Lungpo Chodok said. He said, we can't see our own eyes. And this is because why can't you see your own eyes? Because you don't have a mirror. And he said, so in the same way, we can't see our own defilements because we don't have the mirror of wisdom. So really, it's a good point. It's not exactly what was being asked, but why pushing oneself should really best be done under a qualified teacher. I mean, it's a very good point as to how to deal with pushing yourself. I agree. Should have to do with the teacher. But I think it's also because you see, the state of enlightenment shouldn't be any kind of striving, no? The state of enlightenment is we could say, the perfect natural state. So an arahant is in the natural state. The rest of us are all mixed up. Some of us push ourselves too hard in things, some of us are too lazy in things, some of us are on the wrong path, some of us are on the right path or on a good path, some of us are on a bad path. We have all different kinds, and most of us are none of the above and all of the above. We're all mixed up. Sometimes we push ourselves too hard, sometimes we're too lazy, sometimes we get on a good path, sometimes we get on a bad path, sometimes we go nowhere and just run around in circles, sometimes we just stand there and look left and look right and don't know where to go. This is what the state that we're in. An arahant doesn't have any of this. They're not pushing themselves in any way. When they practice, it's natural. It's effortless, you would say. This is how I think we should understand the state of the arahant, that it's a natural state. So pushing yourself means to effect some kind of a change. We're trying to get ourselves back to a state of equilibrium, where we're simply aware of things, where we're aware of things as they arise, without any kind of partiality. But the pushing yourself is the effort to do that. It's not the effort to go to this extreme or that extreme. And so the teacher's job is, when you push yourself too hard, to pull you back. So when a person is pushing themselves too hard, you either warn them. In cases that they're torturing themselves, you have to tell them not to do that. In cases that they're getting excited about something, they're pushing themselves because they're really getting excited about something. It's the teacher's job to get bored and to be uninterested, to show them that is not something interested. So meditators come and say, I saw this, I saw that, and they're like, oh yeah, did you acknowledge? And reminding them that this is not something special, this is not the goal. When meditators are too lazy or not pushing hard enough, it's the teacher's job to say, today do more meditation, or today I give you a new exercise, and to push them on. When a meditator is struggling, it's the teacher's job to encourage them. All of these things are because we can't see our own defilements. We can't see what we're lacking. When you push yourself, you're pushing yourself based on your current conditions. So if you have if you have excitement about something, you'll decide that you have to push yourself to be more excited about it. Or if you're stressing about something, you'll think, yes, I have to push myself harder, because that's the stress that you have. It's very difficult without wisdom, without the wisdom and the experience of having gone through the practice on your own, to catch yourself and say, no, I have to do the opposite of what I want to do, right? Because I'm out of balance. So people who push themselves is generally in that category, and it's, as Palanyani said, I agree, it's often associated with ego, and the person might not be egotistical, but it's associated with an idea or a concept or a view that some segment of reality is better. No, I should torture myself. If I go to this extreme, it will be good, and loses sight of the balance, the state of balance, which is simply aware of things as they are. I mean, when you stand under a waterfall, you should be aware of standing under a waterfall. When you stick your finger in a fire, you should be aware of sticking your finger in the fire. The act of doing it has nothing to do with being enlightened. It has no reference, no relation. Even if it's something that makes your mind more powerful, if it's something that makes your body more healthy, if it's something that tests your mind or so on, or tests your endurance or your ability to bear certain experiences. All of these can actually be hindrances to the practice. A person who has a strong mind can become attached to having a strong mind. A person who has a strong body can, of course, become attached to having a strong body. The story about the monk who stuck his finger in the fire is, I think, a little bit different. The reason why he did that was not to test himself. He wanted to offer his finger to the Buddha, or not exactly to the Buddha, to as an offering to the Dhamma, kind of in his determination to become a Buddha. So he didn't stick his finger in the fire. He burnt his finger to the stump. I don't know which finger, maybe the baby finger, hopefully not one he uses all the time. But he burnt it to the stump, so he has no finger left. That's what they said. And it was a sacrifice that he made. So it wasn't exactly about pushing himself. It was some idea that some people might say was extreme or crazy, but was a part of his determination, making a sincere determination to become a Buddha. Which, honestly, my teacher, when he told this story, he had just gotten back from going around the world, and it was in front of all of the lay people from the village that were in Jomtong, and he said, "I don't think anybody here could do that. I think you'd all pass out before you go." He said, "You people wouldn't." He said, "Nobody here would ever be able to do such a thing." He said, "I think we wouldn't be able to stand such a thing." He was laughing about it. So it is somehow to be to be esteemed in one sense, or to be appreciated, that this monk was able to have that much determination, because the point being that you need that kind of determination to become a Buddha. You need more than that. You have to be willing to walk across an ocean of hot embers, or swim through an ocean of razor blades from one end to the other, if that's what it takes to become enlightened. So that's what that was about. It wasn't. It was kind of pushing the limits of one's intention to become a Buddha.
There's one thing I want to add. You mentioned the determination, and that, of course, is a great determination the monk did to become a Buddha. But when a meditator is on a retreat and has the goal to become enlightened, this determination is needed. This determination is needed. I would say you get out as a result what you give in. When you are really able, willing to give up your life, then you will have good results. But I don't think that's pushing to the limits, although it might seem to some it is. But this is more like, I would say, it's more like letting go of any limits, and letting go of the wanting to live the life as you lived it before. That's a very, very different, important point when you are on retreat, not so much when you're meditating alone at home.
And it's kind of the difference between putting up with deadly pain and bringing it on, no? I mean, the giving up one's life should be for the purpose of meditating, or saying, no matter what comes, I'm not going to react, or I'm going to let go. I'm going to accept the experience. No, whatever phenomena arise, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, thinking, I'm going to see them just as seeing, hearing, smelling. I'm not going to be partial to them in any way, and that includes death. That includes, dying. So that was the test that night, to do walking meditation and sitting meditation in the rain, and we managed to do 45 minutes of walking in heavy rain, and even the lightning struck. So the lightning struck just a few miles away. It was quite close, and so immediately this thought arose: wow, I could really die here. I mean, this is no longer an intellectual exercise. So we're doing walking back and forth, and thinking like this, like this could be my last moment. I mean, obviously it's a little bit hyperbolic, because but lightning has struck very close to our monastery. We felt the lightning in our feet. It's blown out the lights and so on. So it is hitting all around us, and it could hit. But this feeling arose, and suddenly, this is really it. And so we, set in the mind that we're doing this. We're going to take whatever comes, even to that extent. We're not going to project anything on this experience of knowing There's thoughts that know that you could die. We're going to take those as just thoughts. There's worries or these fears or this, you got to get out of here. We're going to take that as a thought. And if and when we die, we're going to be mindful of that as it occurs. So reminding yourself that this could happen at any time, you better be ready for it, and being as mindful as you can, one step by step. I think that you could consider within the limits. We weren't in the rain thinking that rain was somehow going to help us, but we had made a determination to practice there, and so come what may, we're going to do the practice. And I think that can be useful. There's a story of a monk who practiced meditation while it was snowing, out in the open, and he just sat through it and persevered. Persevering in the face of, there was a story of a monk who I think, there's a story of the monk in the Visuddhimagga who was determined to keep his morality. So these bandits, they tied him up with a vine that was still alive. And so this is how I understand the story. It was still alive, so he didn't want to break it by freeing himself. He knew that he could break out of it, but if he broke out of it, he'd be breaking the precept. This, not even an immoral precept, but it was one of the monk's precepts not to kill vegetable life as well. And so he didn't do it. And he was sitting tied up in the forest, and suddenly a forest fire came, and the bandits ran away. And he was left sitting there, and he knew he could break out of it, but he didn't break out of it, and he sat there and was burnt to death. And the monks found him later and erected a chaitya, a pagoda in his honor, thinking, wow, this guy was really serious. So, even to that extent, I would say you're still within the limits of what is correct practice and what is useful practice. Theoretically, if a monk decides he wants to break out of the vines and break the precepts, I'm not going to scold him about it. But I don't think it's necessary to scold the monk who in fact, the monks at the time seemed to think it was a incredible practice and an incredible sacrifice. That kind of pushing yourself to stay with and to not react. But the action, the intention to do something has not just to do with ego, I think also wrong view, and it has to do with what I was saying about sila bhatta paramasa, thinking that somehow this practice has some benefit, and that leads to a perversion in the mind. When you think that standing under waterfalls is going to be of benefit to you, when you think that standing on one leg or looking at the sun when it rises, or you think putting your finger through in a candle flame is somehow going to benefit your practice, that has an effect on the mind. It augments your wrong view and your attachment to wrong practice, and also the ego and self as well. So I think there's that's where I would draw the line in terms of staying with it, even to the point of death, and actually encouraging it. So in the Sabbasava Sutta, the Buddha says, even pain to the point of death, you should forbear. You should be patient with. This is adivasana pahataba. But then he says, I think vinodana pahataba, the running away. He said, but if you're walking down a path and you come to a bramble bush, you shouldn't just walk through the bramble bush. This is where you should avoid certain things, because there's no benefit from walking through the bramble bush. If you're walking in the forest and an elephant starts charging at you, well, you should go around the elephant, or avoid the elephant, or even run from the elephant in zigzag patterns, because apparently they can't run in zigzags. So the Buddha actually says there are cases where you might want to avoid certain things, but I think the point of not creating suffering for that purpose, because that's called sila bhatta paramasa.
I think it's important for us to understand that for an enlightened being, it might be different to sit in the forest bound up with grass or with what was it?
Wine.
With wine, and die in the fire. But for unenlightened beings, that it's maybe better to run.
This is true. The other thing is you don't always want to push yourself. The only thing I was saying is you can't fault the guy, but you shouldn't you shouldn't consider that that's necessary, or that's that's even the best, because it could be that by doing that you're born in hell as a result, or because you're, oh my God, I'm burning up. Whereas you could have instead left and gone and practiced vipassana and become enlightened and at least gone to heaven.
Yeah.